Dude, I have never had a level of interaction with lefties that I've had to the same toxic level of... I'm literally making fun of Nick.
Go
ahead, Booger Nick. Tell me how I'm obfuscating, please.
How is it?
Please tell me how I'm
like
obfuscating.
You call me Booger Nick like you're not a pedophile. It's kind of...
I mean, I'm not a pedophile. Let me put it this way. There aren't any videos of me being a pedophile. There are videos of you eating boogers, Nick.
It's not like a normal thing. And I wanted to ask Destiny at some point, like, have you taken a life, dude? Have you taken a life? Because, like, you're acting like you've taken a life at this moment, and you fucking haven't, Destiny. You would fight to the death for your saxophone. Okay, do it, Destiny. Fucking kill a guy for your sax. I want to see you do it. And then we'll try your court case in a court of law where that's going to be self-defense, and you're going to argue with the jury and say, you know what? I could shoot that guy running away.
I mean, he'll stream it.
He'll stream the case. It'll be incredible. This is not a good look for Joel, lol. It's an incredible.
The only thing that, so from a logical level that bothers me, because whether or not you'd win in court or not doesn't really determine whether or not we're speaking, if something is morally defensible or not, which is kind of silly. Also, shooting somebody in the back is like the most extreme way of, like, I don't know if you can like defend your property by shooting someone running away. I mean, I get, like, you're loading this in ways that like get away from the core issue, right? Like, should you be able to shoot blindly into a crowd or shoot someone in the back? Like, I don't know. Should you be able to, no, probably not, right? Or should you be able to hunt somebody down? That's only, like, well, no, that's different. I'm talking about preventing somebody from like violating you or your property, right? It's a little bit different. I don't know if that's meaningful or not. It depends on where he runs with that. But then, like, the idea of, like, could I pull the trigger or do it? Well, I don't know. That's not really relevant to the moral argument. And then secondly, the thing that bothers me, like, on a logical level. Like, okay, it seems like a little bit logically inconsistent or incongruent. This is kind of a dumb argument. But then on the thing that always triggers me talking to these guys on, like, an emotional level is, like, hey, like, depending on who you are and depending on what kind of property you have, that property means a lot to somebody. This just seems like an impenetrable argument where I just can't get through to some people that it's not just a thing. It represents so much more than that. It's not just your trumpet that you play, or whatever. Like, these things represent like way more than just like, oh, it's like an item. Like, oh, wow, somebody tried to steal your Backstreet Boys CD, so you executed their entire fucking family lineage? Like, okay, dude. Use pets as a property example? No, because people would say, well, pets are different. They would instantly, they'd buckle on that immediately. Or not buckle. I mean, rightfully so. Some people consider pets to be not quite human, but more valuable than normal property, so they would like immediately change on that. Although, that would still be interesting. I say, could you kill somebody stealing your dog? And if they say yes, then I could say, okay, so do you value human lives less than animal lives? Because if you're gonna say that killing somebody stealing your property is the same as valuing property over human lives, well then if you kill somebody stealing your dog, aren't you valuing like dog lives over human lives? I don't know. You could run down that argument, but it seems like at this point we're already kind of away from the good faith aspect. What's up, Smart Books?
Not much, dude. I figured it would be better faith for the reviews to like reach out to you both individually beforehand. So if you have any clarifications, you could like get those in.
Yeah, what do you want clarifications on?
Well, it's cool to see that you're reviewing Big Joel's stuff right now, because at least at the time, I felt like that was something you went a bit hard on. I'm not sure if that guy like deserved some of the things.
I am all out of patience for people that act nice to me and then just get on and give the most dog shit fucking like examples of like my argument. It just bothers the fuck out of me. I just have zero respect, and he's done it twice now. And I know people are gonna say, well, it wasn't that bad, but it's like, oh, a lot of people say I overreact to the Big Joel stuff, okay? Here's my problem. When I interact with other streamers, I have to take full fucking responsibility for like the worst things that my audience does. What did he do? After we had a conversation, so one, he does like a really dumb thing where he's like, man, you know, I talked to Destiny and I just can't imagine anybody killing someone over their treasured Walkman. And I was like, okay, dude. And then the next day, he was tweeting, he's like, you know, the way that Destiny's talking, it kind of sounds like he's just talking about his feelings. Kind of feels like he's being cucked out of his possessions. Like all of this is just about some big, strong man cucking him, like taking his girlfriend or like taking his, it's like, what the fuck? Now, fuck you guys. You guys are fucking losers, all right? All of you guys in my chat, they're like, you went too hard on him. Nah, fuck off, dude. He was so embarrassed by those tweets, he fucking deleted them afterwards, okay? Fuck out of here with that bullshit.
Based.
Wait, did he say that? Yeah, I don't know what you guys thought he tweeted. Waking up still thinking about all this, I can't help but think it's so like feelings oriented. Wow, how dismissive. The emotions you feel watching the big man take your Walkman. I just wonder, like, what if someone has sex with your wife? You warn him beforehand that you'll kill him, but he does it. I can't help but think most of the arguments in favor of Walkman murder guy would apply. Imagine how awful it would be to let him have sex with her. I'd be happy to live in a society where we agree to this rule. You're privileged by virtue of never being cheated on. Like, when I have a debate with someone, and then they take to Twitter afterwards and they start posting a bunch of dog shit, garbage fucking takes. And then their whole fucking community starts like railing on me and shitting on me because of their dog shit takes. And then everybody else is like, Destiny, why are you being so mean to him? He wasn't being that mean on Twitter. Like, fuck you, dude. Fuck off. Fuck out of here. Like, I get held to such an ungodly high standard with my community, and other people are like leading like basically like harassment mobs against shit that I'm like barely saying. And you guys are saying like, Joel didn't tweet anything that bad. Fuck you, dude. Fuck out of here. Some fucking loser wants to run on fucking Twitter and start tweeting this shit after I try to like engage you with like a pretty decent argument despite your inability to comprehend what I'm saying over and over and over again. And this is what you run to Twitter afterwards? Nah, fuck that shit, okay? Fuck out of here. Isn't that guy literally objectifying women in that tweet too? Oh yeah, but we don't know. I think that's why he deleted them. To reduce my whole argument to like, oh, I just can't believe that somebody would want to kill somebody for taking their Walkman is like an incredibly disrespectful way to dismiss everything I said. So I like stopped going at that point, but I can understand if it seems harsh. Sure.
Okay. Do you, okay, this is pushing it, but would you ever consider dropping things like subhuman as like a go-to insult, or?
I can't say anything anymore. What am I supposed to use as an insult? Oh my God.
So that's why I'm like hesitant to tell you that. I think over the last year, I've gotten better about not being pedantic about the little things you say, but that's like a pretty, obvious area for improvement, and it's something that people will get upset about.
I feel like, unironically, I'm gonna do the fucking anti-escalate. I feel like we're literally getting to a point where I actually can't say anything mean to anybody. That's what it feels like when we go there. Right. And I know that sounds hyperbolic, but like, it's real, like, and I think I've done a good job of getting back there, where I don't think I've called anybody a retard in like a month now or whatever. Like, I got rid of that word again. But like, dude, I have axed so many like ableist or bad words or whatever from my vocabulary, and now it's like, okay, well, subhuman is pretty mean. It's like, that is not targeting a specific race. That's like what's next? Like calling somebody a piece of shit. Like, that's too, like, I feel like we're basically getting to the point where like, just don't be mean to anybody.
Yeah, or try, because the problem that I have is something that I'm going to bring up during the review is that sometimes you go to really, really extreme positions, and those extreme positions or extreme statements are very difficult to get people to agree with you on them. And I think that that's in large part due to the way that you put those ideas forward, not necessarily like the ideas themselves a lot of the time.
Oh, okay.
So like that's one thing that I saw in the hour or two of the talk that I was able to catch last night that I think will come up in the review. Just because I feel like you could maybe get agreement on stuff.
Oh, I understand. So an example of this would be, it's possible that I could get Vaush to agree that Abigail engages in messaging that is harmful overall to both her cause and the cause in general. But when I open by calling her a subhuman piece of shit, I've instantly negated any ability to reach any amount of agreement there, even if we would agree otherwise, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, or when you say things like, if we wiped her and her content off the face of the earth, then it wouldn't have like any measurable impact. Like, you kind of go like too far when you say some stuff, and yeah.
Sure, yeah, I mean, like, that's kind of hyperbolic, I guess, yeah. And it's like part of like, in terms of what I do in terms of entertainment, is being a little bit hyperbolic sometimes. I guess it hurts some people to disagree with me, sure, but I think I probably agree. If I'm very, very gentle and nice, I can probably have a better chance of getting someone to agree with the position, sure.
Okay. As long as we're on the same page about that. But yeah, some of this stuff is your brand, so of course I'm trying to like keep that in mind as I'm watching it and giving feedback. Was there anything frustrating like in your own performance or in Vaush's performance that you'd like me to like kind of be on the lookout for? Or?
What did I say before? Something that's really bizarre. No, hold on. I think the most frustrating thing that happens is that I think that there are a couple things. My mind just went to like 5 different areas at once. Okay, let me focus. One thing is that it feels like Vaush knows that he has to like come to terms with an uncomfortable question. So rather than answer it, he pads it with a whole bunch of irrelevant stuff to kind of obscure his answer. Let me give you an example, okay? So, would it be morally permissible to steal a child's cereal, right? Let's say that somebody's given the moral argument that stealing cereal is always okay, right? Okay, and so I ask them, really, you think stealing, so would it be morally permissible to steal a child's cereal? So if somebody's open with statement, now if we were just being pure logic brains, then the person would respond, yes, it is morally permissible, morally permissible to steal anyone's cereal. A child counts as a person, therefore it is morally permissible, I think I'm spelling this wrong, to steal their cereal.
Yeah.
That would be like the logical like response. Like, okay, cool, then we move on. The way that Vaush would answer this question is, okay, wait, so would it be morally permissible to steal a child's cereal? Is he would go, well, I don't like the idea of stealing cereal. Personally, I wouldn't do it. And I think that we can be better people. And I don't really like the idea of that. I suppose someone could, and I'd consider it to be moral, I guess, but we shouldn't do that. Like, I feel like I get these weird things where like, he kind of answers the question, but he'll pad it with a whole bunch of statements that are kind of irrelevant to it. So like, I think one of the questions was like, do you think that it's morally acceptable for a lefty to rent property at market rates? And I feel like I asked that question like 3 or 4 times, and I feel like, in my memory, it's like he'll say things like, well, if they can do it, they should rent it lower. But it's okay, but that's not what I'm asking. It feels like he'll talk around the answer a lot to avoid kind of like owning the hard conclusion of the previous things he said. Like, and he's just trying to hide from the actual answer. I get that feeling a lot.
I would agree. He gives a lot of like very political answers, and it does seem like he's keenly aware of questions that are going to be
difficult to answer. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna like combine that with a bit of a compliment to you, though. Normally, when there are questions like that, you kind of fail to see the implications of your answers to things, but this time around, you not only were observant of when a question would screw you, but when Vaush's answers weren't sufficient, or other things at like a rhetorical level you seem more aware of in this talk. So
yeah, and then to be clear with what I've told you in the past, I'm always aware of these things. I just normally don't care because they're not really relevant to my argument. So like, if he were to answer this in like 2020, then I would just move to the next thing because I understand what he's saying more or less, and I know that he's being nervous. But now I'm trying to point it out more so that the audience can get an idea of like my frustration in an argument. So I am aware of it. I'm just trying to be more like vocal about it on both sides now. Yeah. The second issue that I have is I feel like sometimes he has a bewildering understanding of things I'm saying that should be pretty clear. I wish I could remember some exact answers, but there were a couple times where he would say to me, like, do you think lefties should unironically have to give up everything or can't participate in society? And I feel like I've been ultra clear to stay away from giving any indication that I feel that way. I've never said that somebody should donate all their money or that somebody isn't allowed to participate. Like, I think I've said pretty clearly that, like, you can just make like, but I feel like he'll keep kind of jumping back to those very safe straw mans that like get easily destroyed. I feel like he jumps back to that in the middle of conversation sometimes, which kind of bothers me. The kind of pivoting around that. Yeah. Those are the two things that bothered me the most. I felt like I tried a lot. I feel like the majority of this conversation was spent where I feel like I was legitimately making a good faith effort to understand his position. And I feel like today I still don't know his position. I don't know. I truly don't. I don't know if he thinks it's morally permissible to be like the most capitalist person you can be in a society, or if you should strive to live like a little bit more morally, especially when he's making like very weird moral arguments like, well, you can do it if somebody else would just do it otherwise. Because that seems unreal to me that anybody would believe that morally. Like, oh, so it's okay to engage in some immoral action if somebody else would just step up and do it regardless? That feels unreal to me. And when I started testing that with different scenarios, the thing that made me think that he wasn't, I don't want to say wasn't being good faith, but that he wasn't honestly engaging with that question is when I started to give hypotheticals, he went to absurd lengths to say that they weren't valid. So when I gave the hypothetical of would it be okay to own slaves in the South, like prior to the freeing of slaves and anything like that, and he's like, well, no, that's not okay because you could always like free your slaves and slaves weren't necessary to the South's economy. And it's like, that's really weird. It felt like the Rittenhouse argument where he was saying like, well, I think if a black guy is being unjustly chased by 10 men, he should submit himself and hope that like they treat him well. Like that. It felt like he was like trying to like avoid certain hypotheticals in really insane ways, which made me feel like there's no way he's honestly engaging with the question. But I'm not sure. That's my feeling on it. Yeah.
And that's very tough to deal with in the moment. Like, I know that you can tell the audience that he's avoiding something and point it out at like a meta level, but in terms of changing the question in a way that's going to invite him to answer it, or even like debate tactic him into a position where he's going to have to answer it in a roundabout way, I think are things I'm going to look at going through the review. So some alternatives for you for sure.
Yeah, Mike, because I feel like this is my feeling of what's happening, okay? My feeling of what's happening is that this is something that he hasn't thought about like to an extreme extent yet, and I'm asking him for clarifying questions on positions that aren't fully developed. So as he's developing them in the course of the argument, like it's going to happen that he's going to say some things that will contradict something else, and then when I just point out a contradiction, he gets very upset and says like, because he started to pull out like the Destiny debate toolkit where he's like, you're just going for gotchas. It feels like you're just trying to trap me. And it's like, well, no, dude, like you said this thing like 2 minutes ago, and now you're saying this thing. And it feels like, and you can listen to this, and it might be that I'm too biased because of the caught up in the argument. It felt like he was going to like an absurd level of mental gymnastics to justify like every single, like, this is why no lefty has to do anything good ever. And this is why all of my critiques aimed at individuals are actually, all of them are just jokes. And this is why like everything is like bad though on this. Like it felt like we were going through, like we were making so many exceptions. Like I think at one point I specifically say, if you're going to make a moral statement and put like 50 million asterisks behind it, like all of these conditionals are weakening your statement so much. That's what it felt like. Yeah.
Now, one thing that I struggle with, but something that came up a lot here, is this idea of there may be a difference between you in terms of like being a rule utilitarian and an act utilitarian. At a philosophical level, can you describe any problems you had with the talk? Or
I don't think philosophy was like necessary for any part of this conversation. And I thought the reason why I tried to avoid the philosophy talk is because I thought we were getting like lost in the weeds in terms of like philosophically, or I thought we were getting lost in the weeds of the actual argument. I don't think we needed to dive into any philosophy for these for this conversation. So that's why we didn't. I can talk some philosophy if you want about how I don't think it applied if you want, but.
No, I'm trying to talk to a philosophy guy about it because some of the PhilosophyTube type
Rem?
people. No,
Oh, okay.
I don't like talking. Yeah.
Okay. Like so for instance, like there like, and I don't have the necessary level of philosophy to do hardcore ethics debates, but I know that at least at my level, you can argue. So I would say that I'm a rule utilitarian. You can argue that rule utilitarianism collapses into act utilitarianism, that it's actually the same thing. But you can also argue for forms of like threshold deontology that sound a little bit utilitarian. You can also argue that threshold deontology could collapse into deontology. And you can argue that threshold deontology and rule utilitarianism are the same thing. So at the end of the day, like getting lost in the weeds on like normative ethics is like, it's such a much more complicated question that doesn't need to be addressed here. Like we can all like have a general understanding of agreement that like, well, this thing is probably a bad thing. This is why I kept getting annoyed when you kept bringing, well, I'm a consequentialist. And it's like, hold on, okay? Just because you're a consequentialist, you're doing like you're doing like the 5th grade consequentialism, where you're like, oh shit, we should always kill one person to save 5 people. That's always going to be a good thing because of consequentialism. And it's like, well, hold on, what kind of society would we live in if that was a good thing, right? This would be horrible, you know, right? If we think like once, that's why I was getting really annoyed that like he kept trying to like bring up like consequence, because I was trying to avoid that because consequentialism had nothing to do with any of this. Yeah.
Okay, and to be charitable to Vaush, could you see any way that consequentialism could kind of help describe the position he's trying to form, or not really?
I hope not. It's possible, but if it was, then his consequentialist understanding is unbelievably horrible. Because like, if I'm being ultra charitable, his consequentialist underpinning here for this moral argument would be, it's okay if people are inconsistent so long as it achieves some good outcome. Like that's literally like the most fundamental basic way I could view that argument. But like, and that works in one scenario. That works like in a one-off. But the problem with that thinking is that like, if you have a whole bunch of people that are being inconsistent, they might be good one day, but the next day they could be fucking horrible. Like you might have a person that lies about Breonna Taylor, but they're achieving a good outcome, so that makes it okay. But then tomorrow they might lie about fucking QAnon. And you can't say like, well, hold on, you could lie this time, but you can't lie that. Like you're creating a system of chaos at that point. Like that's such a ridiculous way of viewing anything, of ethics or epistemology or anything. Like
Okay. So that's like three major things so far. Were there, like, I'd really like to get something that you might want to clarify or backpedal on a little bit, or maybe rephrase.
The biggest thing that I could like quote unquote backpedal on is that like maybe it's not fair to say that like the left engages in the same level of harm as the right does online, or that like QAnon and all that conspiracy spreading stuff can be more harmful than others. That's probably true, I guess. The main thing that I obsess over is the spreading of misinformation. So when I see somebody engage in like QAnon conspiracy theories, and then I see somebody lie about whether or not Breonna Taylor was in bed or not, to me that is like very equivalent. That lying and misinformation. But like in terms of like overall harm done to society, I think I clarified this with Vaush, where in terms of overall harm done to society, like the QAnon stuff can be worse. But I think that like on its own, like the misrepresenting fact is just really, 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 really bad, and it's one of the worst things that can happen, regardless of the outcome of that. Yeah.
Related to that, I remember a specific point in the debate where he asked you if two different content creators or two different politics people are similar in like how bad they were or something like that, and you responded yes, and he found that to be like unbelievable.
Yeah. So we were thinking of this on two different levels. So he compared PhilosophyTube with Brianna Joy or whatever the fuck her name is. And the reason why I said yes is because they both engage in misinformation, which is just horrible to me. So on that level, the thing that I care the most about, they're the same. But then I think later on, he asked me like, do you really think that he used an example of Brianna talking to Chomsky. When he's like, do you really think that anything that PhilosophyTube is that bad? And when I think about like, well, in terms of like harm they've caused, the Brianna person is infinitely worse probably. Well, not infinitely worse, but it's far worse than Abigail. So like, yeah, I can agree that one causes more harm. So when we're thinking in terms of like just like end result, like harm to society, like, yeah, there's probably a difference. But in terms of the thing that I care about, which is the spreading of misinformation, I think they're very similar. But I clarified that later, but I probably could have been more clear on that initially, or I need to be more clear on that initially.
Okay, yeah, I'm happy to hear that, because I think that's more or less what the Vaush side may have wanted out of you. One other thing, so I feel like you were pretty scathing in your kind of review of PhilosophyTube. I would agree that a lot of the economic stuff is kind of cringe and like second grade socialist stuff, but I think saying things like all of the content is bad or we could erase it all and it won't have an I feel like these are statements that I would imagine you'd want to walk back, especially after watching a video that, in my opinion, was more than a 5 out of 10. I think it was pretty okay.
It was okay, sure. But the problem is that my problem is that when you as a content creator put certain arguments out there into the ether, other people will carry those arguments for you. And when you're engaged in having a massive platform and you're not willing to do any research, you're not willing to do any homework, and you will just willfully, with gross negligence, put out unfactual statement after unfactual statement, I think that causes a harm. I think that the people in the world that lie about Breonna Taylor being in bed or not are the people in the world that give power to the QAnoners. That when you start playing fast and loose with the truth and you start lying like that, you basically create a world where everybody thinks it's okay to lie for their side. I don't like that. One of the most traumatizing experiences in the world is, it happened recently when I was at my mom's a few months ago, and anytime we would argue about something, I would have to concede so much ground to her. One story that she brought up was the kid, that Republican high school kid and the Native American or whatever. When that story was initially reported, there were a lot of people that were running with the idea that those kids like chased down some natives and antagonized them. That is a total fucking lie. It was an absolute fucking lie. And the fact that when I have to talk to my mom about these things, that I have to run back and I'd be like, yeah, okay, hold on. The media did lie about this. Yeah, a lot of left-leaning people did exaggerate this. Yeah, that's not really true. Oh my God, dude, it destroys my argument. I feel cringe even trying to say that these people are credible afterwards. Like, it hurts me so much to do it. That's like my big problem with people that are lying and misrepresenting facts. Like, fuck, it hurts so much.
On that topic, you said something about misinformation that honestly triggered me. I think it was something along the lines of, there's no point in looking at how misinformation is disseminated because it all comes down to ideology for everybody. And ideological reasons are the things pushing misinformation, and that explains everything. And I feel like that's a really short-sighted view of things, and I can't imagine you'd like maintain that position.
That's probably somewhat simplistic. I'm sure that there are other reasons why people spread misinformation. I do think that it is largely explanatory of the vast majority of misinformation that gets perpetuated online, though. Like, I think, like, in real life, there's a lot of reasons. There's a lot of different cognitive things going on. It could be trauma responses to things. It could be selective, like, exposure to things, blah, 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 blah. But when it comes to large content creators online, like, the only thing I can think of is, like, this is just an ideological bias, 100%. It must be. I can't think of how else anybody could come to a conclusion like this, unless you just have a massive ideological bias. I think that the ideological biases are explanatory of the vast majority of online misinformation. I would stand by that.
Okay. Because I think that oftentimes there are more innocent answers that may apply to a lot of, at least, the smaller people, or people that engage with like much less media. Some people surround themselves with sources of information that, if those are tainted, are going to impact how they see the world. And I don't know if that's down to ideology or just down to like what news they're getting.
Yeah, I think that that's an argument that can be made. I'm noticing this when I'm going through so I'm making a big write-up on everything that happened with the GME stock. There are certain people that I hold more accountable than others. So for instance, Tabor has made some pretty irresponsible tweets regarding the GME thing, and so has Michaela, I think, Tyler One's girlfriend, has made some pretty irresponsible tweets. But these are people where, like, I don't hold them in huge responsibility. They don't market themselves as news commentators. I don't know how much reading or research they do on this. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say, like, these guys have ideological biases, although they probably do. But, like, I would, like, largely consider them more like victims of misinformation than propagators of misinformation. But when you have a YouTube channel that has 1 million subscribers, and you're doing, like, video essay-related content, and you're giving your takes on things, and they're just completely and totally wrong, I don't think you get to use the excuse at that point, I'm stuck in an information bubble. You are the information bubble to some people.
Sure, but I guess it's a difference between assigning them like the title of irresponsible versus the title of, like, somebody that's actually trying to spread misinformation. I feel like that there's a big difference between those two. Like, somebody choosing to accept a lie, like in the video PhilosophyTube was talking about, accepting lies for the purpose of like their position or their political stuff. I feel like that's very different than just like straight up being misinformed and not being diligent and being irresponsible.
Well, yeah, maybe I could clarify that. I don't know if anybody, like, actually lies intentionally, or there might be some people, but that's probably like that's a very, very, very slim minority of the people that actually lie, right? The majority of people probably feel to some level that they're being truthful, but like that level of truth that they're engaging in is like grossly irresponsible. Like, so for instance, somebody that drives drunk, they don't actually think they're going to get in an accident. They think they're probably going to be okay and they're going to make it. But like, you're being so irresponsible at that point that if you do get into an accident, I'm going to still assign you like that responsibility of like, you drove drunk and you fucked up and you should have known better. Much the same where it's like, I don't think there's a lefty content creator that is explicit like, I'm going to make a video today, I'm just going to lie about everything. But it's more just like, I read a bunch of lefty tweets, they seem to agree with me, I like the narrative, I'm not going to do much digging into it, and I'm just going to publish this video. I think it's like comparable to that.
Oh, another thing.
Another
one. I find this to be a difficult thing for you to respond to. I'm not sure how you can, but when Vaush says something like you're spiteful with leftist content creators, or you act spiteful in general, I feel like that's something that, like, if you're alone in a room with God, you probably have to give the concession there because you are a bit spiteful. But in the moment, I think it takes a lot away from your argument, and I don't see how you could like.
I mean, all I can do is like appeal to my history. Like, do I sound spiteful when I talk to leftists? Yeah, of course. But I'm not spiteful that they're leftists. I'm spiteful that they're wrong and stupid on things. And it's the exact same way that I treated Nazis and alt-righters as well. Like, right now, people are saying like, oh, you're so spiteful towards leftists. But I was like, okay, sure. Have you seen my conversations with Sargon of Akkad? Like, have you seen where I'm talking to Nick and I call him Booger Nick? Like, dude, I have never had a level of interaction with lefties that I've had to the same toxic level of, I'm literally making fun of Nick.
Go
ahead, Booger Nick. Tell me how I'm obfuscating, please.
How is it?
Please tell me how I'm
like
obfuscating.
That you call me Booger Nick like you're not a pedophile. It's kind of.
I mean, I'm not a pedophile. Let me put it this way: there aren't any videos of me being a pedophile. There are videos of you eating boogers, Nick. So, like, fucking picking noses and like fucking all like crazy shit on stream. Like, my level of antagonism towards Nazi-related people is like unbelievably high. compared to like where I'm making fun of the fact that one, I don't remember his fucking name, that one alt-righter guy like married a Jewish girl even though he's fucking alt-right and tried to hide it because I read that New Yorker profile of him. Like I am way more, and Tonka trucks, oh my God. But we're like going hard on each other. Like, dude, I went so much harder on fucking alt-righters and Nazis than I ever fucking went on these lefties. But people will say like, I think that when you deal with lefties, you're super spiteful. It's like, dude, did you not see any of the content I did where I argue with people like JF, where I argue to people like fucking Tonka Saw, where I'm arguing with people like fucking Sargon of Akkad, where I'm arguing with like Nick Fuentes, James Alsup, like Eric Stryker? Like I went hard. These were hard. These weren't just hard factually. These were hard like fucking like insult personal level. So it's really irritating to me that people, Brittany Venti, holy shit, that's true, yeah. Like these were personal, mean debates. So it's irritating to me when somebody will try to make the excuse like, I think that the arguments against lefties are just bad because you're spiteful. It's like, okay, well, you thought all my arguments against right-leaning people were really good, and I was way more brutal with them than I ever were with you people. So that's a little frustrating to me. I do agree that it can take the wind out of my sails in the middle of an argument, though. So I don't really know how to respond well to that, but.
And the other thing is, even if you were spiteful, I don't know if that completely like means that your conclusion that you reached is incorrect, or
well, sure,
or
but that's
being fair more generally.
The implication when someone says you're being spiteful is that you're emotionally compromised, so you're not making good arguments, right? Is what they're trying to say. It undermines the validity of what you're saying. Yeah.
It is, which is why I think that the solution to that is probably something along the lines of bringing it back to like, well, that doesn't impact my argument. You would be spiteful too if you're across the table from people saying some of the things that they're saying or spreading the misinformation that they are. And that's personally upsetting to me. But I think I do a good job of balancing that alongside with like my attention to the logic of things and my attention to the arguments.
Yeah, I
can
can.
hearing people out.
I agree with you. I could try that, but the problem is once somebody's brought up that you're spiteful, we've already left the realm of them making good arguments, right? Now they're trying to nail you on an ad hom. So like I don't know if they would respond to me trying to bring it back to a logical argument when they're already trying to ad hom me, right?
Yeah. Fair enough. Okay. Let's see here. Is there anything else? Yeah. Because it's just like, I really try hard not to nitpick when you say things like subhuman and whatever, but...
I mean, like, I have no more insults, dude. I have edited my vocabulary so fucking hardcore. And I joked about this in the past, and people made fun of me. Or not made fun of me. Actually, no. I made fun of other people. Because I would say things to people like... Because I even remember tweeting out things like, oh, no, you can't say the N-word anymore. How will you survive? Oh, no, you can't call people F-slurs anymore. How will you survive? But now it's like, well, you can't call people subhuman. You can't call people, what, like, pieces of shit? Or where's the stop? Like, I don't know. That seems a little bit crazy.
First they came for the R slur, now
they come for dummy. Like.
Yeah. Okay. Alrighty. Well, that's a lot of good stuff. Are we okay with each other after the last review? I felt like you were really hurt by like me saying that there was a probability that you looked at those things on your computer.
So like this is something that this is just like, I understand this how I view things. People have like a really big problem with this. I'll tell you this personally, and then we'll just have to know that like audiences will never believe this or understand this. I have a very different view of like, there are things that people do that I just think are so unbelievably fucking stupid that I will disagree with to every fiber of my being. So you talking about how like, well, it's possible you could do blah, blah, the way that you phrase that, I so completely disagree with you. But that doesn't change the way I view you personally. I think for the most part, like 99% of what you do, I probably agree with, and I think you do like good arguments, and I like you as a person. I sound sometimes harsh when I'm like really critical of like a particular thing, but like, I don't know. Some people view it as like being very essentialist. Like, if you think that thing they said is dumb, you must think they're dumb. But I don't think that. I think you're a really cool guy. And I think most of what you do is valuable. Even if I get upset at the time, like most of the time I will think back to things you've said or whatever. I hope you've noticed that, or I don't know if you've noticed that, but there are things that you tell me. I constantly tell people, it's really hard to change your mind in the middle of an argument. Even for me, that's very hard. So there are times when we argue and I'm like, I fucking book fucker, I disagree, blah, 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 blah. But I'll revisit these arguments in my head pretty frequently, and there are things that you've told me that have stuck. Like part of the reason why in 2020 I'm trying to pay a lot more attention to my rhetoric and I'm trying to be more mindful of how things come across, how I sound, is in a large part because of the conversations that we've had. And I think I've even said as much, I say it half jokingly, but it's kind of true at the end of a debate where I was like, I'm going to do this fucking debate, like I know book fucker is going to go over it at the end. So like, I definitely do listen. I take things that you say like very seriously, which is very rare actually. There's very few people that give me any advice on anything that I end up actually listening to. So
I'm really happy to hear that. Yeah. And I have noticed, and you are paying a lot more attention to rhetoric, and you're trying to hold people to account for some of the words that they use to describe your positions. recognizing that an audience that's listening as a third person is going to come away with a different conclusion, or that audience may like get a different implication out of it than maybe even the other creator means. And so, yeah, that's good to hear. And I just felt bad after that one because I don't feel like I understand super well your emotions all the time, and I felt like maybe you felt personally hurt by the percentage chance that I gave.
Oh, no. It's never personal. No, don't worry about that.
Okay.
Unless you start making some shit on your stream where you're like, I think the reason why Destiny argued this so horribly is just because he's a horrible father. Like, until you start doing shit like that, like, I'm not gonna take any argument you say personally. I'll just disagree with a lot, and I'm obviously very passionate about my arguments, but like, I don't know if you've ever done anything that's like personally bothered me ever. Yeah.
And if it's any consolation, dude, you seem like a cool dad. I've been enjoying all the Nathan clips from everything so far. It's been really cute.
Wow, thanks.
Anywho, I'll go ahead and let you get back to your games unless there's anything else you wanted to talk about.
No, I think we're good.
Awesome. Well, have a good rest of your day. See ya, chat. Have a good one.
Have fun. Peace out.
Remember to hit that like and subscribe, and don't forget the notification bell so that my videos show up right in your feed.